Orcs are not what anyone thinks they are. Every green skin, every battle cry, every war the Horde has ever fought traces back to one act of manipulation that turned a civilization of peaceful shamans into the most feared army in Warcraft history. Today, I'm covering everything you need to know, starting with a fact most veterans still get wrong: Draenor. Orcs did not come from Azeroth. 0% of their civilization, 0% of their history, 0% of their culture originated on the world you fight them in. They came from somewhere else entirely. And that origin story is wilder than most players ever realize. Their homeworld was a lush, twin-mooned planet with roaming Rylax, vast savannas of Nagrand, and a mountain range called Gorgrond. The Orcs never gave it a name. It was simply the world. The Draenei refugees who crash-landed there thousands of years later named it Draenor, meaning exile's refuge. The Orcs never bothered. Here's where it gets genuinely insane. The Titan Agrimar, youngest member of the Pantheon, discovered Draenor being consumed by the Evergrowth, a parasitic plant network controlled by 3 massive spore mounds. Unable to fight them without shattering the planet, he channeled primordial elemental energy into its largest mountain, bringing it to life. That mountain's name was Grond, and it walked across the face of Draenor, destroying spore mounds until the third one, Botan, finally killed it. Grond's severed head fell in Nagrand. The Shadowmoon clan found it thousands of years later, still thrumming with raw elemental power, and built a shrine around it. They called it the Throne of the Elements. It is literally a dead Titan construct's skull, and this is where Orcish shamanism was born. The evolutionary chain from Grond to Orc runs through 6 stages: Grond, Colossals, Magnaron, Gron, Ogron, Ogres, and finally Orcs. Every generation got smaller as the primordial energy diluted. This means Orcs share a biological lineage with Gron, the massive one-eyed giants that tower over them. Gron are their great-great-grandparents. For over 5,000 years before any demon ever touched them, the Orcs were a peaceful, clan-based, deeply shamanistic people. They held a biannual festival called Koshharg at the foot of Oshugun, a sacred mountain that was actually a crashed Draenei dimensional ship. All clan violence was forbidden during Koshharg. They shared food, settled disputes, and young Orcs entered trances to commune with the elements. Every single clan did this together. But this ancient peace only held because nobody had noticed them yet. And the moment that changed, nothing would ever be the same. Gul'dan. The corruption of the Orcs didn't start with a demon army. It started with one lie told to one old man in a dream. Kil'jaeden, the Eridar demon lord of the Burning Legion, decided not to attack the Draenei on Draenor directly. Instead, he would turn the native Orcs into a weapon. His first target was Ner'zhul, elder shaman of the Shadowmoon clan, and the most respected Orc on the planet. Kil'jaeden appeared to him in dreams disguised as his dead wife Rulkan, whispering that the Draenei were secretly plotting to destroy the Orcs. Ner'zhul believed it. He rallied the clans. Raids began. But Ner'zhul grew suspicious and traveled to Oshugun to commune with real ancestor spirits. The real Rulkan greeted him with hatred, exposing Kil'jaeden's deception entirely. Ner'zhul resolved to defy the demon and walk away. His own apprentice immediately reported the betrayal. That apprentice was Gul'dan. And here's the thing about Gul'dan nobody talks about. He was not corrupted, not manipulated, not tricked. He walked into the darkness completely on his own. Born crippled and deformed in a clan so small no one now living has heard of it, Gul'dan was beaten and mocked his entire life before being banished. After months of starvation, he crawled to the throne of the elements and offered himself to whatever would end his suffering. The elements recoiled from him. All 4 physically rejected his touch. But a tendril of shadow answered. Kil'jaeden offered power in exchange for service. Gul'dan returned to his village and massacred every single Orc there, including the shaman who had once saved his life. He then infiltrated the Shadowmoon clan by claiming ogres had destroyed his village. After Ner'zhul's defection, Gul'dan founded the Shadow Council, a network of warlocks and corrupted chieftains, and installed Blackhand as a puppet warchief. The plan called for one final step, something that would make the corruption permanent and irreversible. Manaroth the Destructor was summoned to Draenor. His blood was spilled into a sacred pool. The chieftains were offered a chalice. Grommash Hellscream was the first to drink, not because Gul'dan tricked him, because he wanted to. But if you think that moment was the worst thing Gul'dan ever did, wait until you hear what the Orcs did to Draenor with that power, the Dark Portal. With Manaroth's blood burning through their veins, the Orcs didn't just raid the Draenei. They committed a genocide. They destroyed city after city. They besieged Shattrath, the last major Draenei bastion, slaughtering everyone inside. Gul'dan channeled a weapon called the Dark Star to drive the defenders insane before the walls even fell. Velen and a handful of survivors barely escaped. The planet itself started dying, choked by fell energy, its skies turning permanently red. The Orcs had burned through their entire world and had nothing left to conquer. so Gul'dan built a door to someone else's. Here's where it gets complicated. The Dark Portal wasn't just an Orc invention. It required two architects on opposite ends. On Azeroth's side was Medivh, the last guardian of Tirisfal, the most powerful mage in the world, who had been secretly possessed since birth by the spirit of Sargeras himself. Medivh reached out to Gul'dan telepathically and offered a deal. Bring the Horde to Azeroth, and Medivh would tell Gul'dan the location of the tomb of Sargeras. The Orcish stonemasons who built the Draenor-side structure were murdered by warlocks to seal the final ritual. When the portal opened in the black morass of southeastern Azeroth, tens of thousands of Orcs poured through. The first assault on Stormwind Keep was actually a humiliating failure. Gul'dan used the chaos to install Blackhand as warchief and consolidate control. Under Blackhand, the Horde systematically destroyed Grand Hamlet, Sunnyglade, Northshire, Goldshire, and Moonbrook. Entire towns gone. Three things ended the First War. Khadgar, Medivh's young apprentice, discovered his master's possession and helped Lord Anduin Lothar storm Karajan, where Khadgar personally killed Medivh. Gul'dan collapsed into a coma at the exact same moment, having been telepathically ransacking Medivh's dying mind for the tomb's location. And Orgrim Doomhammer seized the opportunity, challenging Blackhand to Mak Gora and crushing his skull with the family Doomhammer after hours of combat. Then, Garona Halforsen, the Shadow Council's greatest assassin, mind-controlled and helpless to stop herself, cut the heart out of King Lane Rin. Stormwind fell. Lothar led the survivors across the Great Sea to Lord Aeron, uniting 7 kingdoms, dwarves, gnomes, and high elves into the Alliance, a coalition built entirely from the wreckage the Horde left behind. The Orcs had just destroyed an entire kingdom, and the man who built them into that weapon was already planning something even worse. Grommash Hellscream. The curse of the Orc people began with one Orc, and it ended with the same one. Grommash Hellscream, chieftain of the Warsong clan, was lean and wiry where other Orcs were massive, with raven black hair and a solid black tattoo covering his entire lower jaw. His name meant the Giant's Heart in ancient Orcish. His father earned the family name Giant Slayer by killing a Grahn while locked in its jaws. The Grahn died first. His weapon was Gorehowl, forged 3 generations before him. Small holes near the handle cause it to emit a screaming howl when swung fast enough. His great-grandfather used it to kill 6 legendary Grahn and sealed their hearts into the blade. He was the first Orc to drink Manaroth's blood, not because Gul'dan ordered him, because he wanted power more than anything else in the world. He called his entire Warsong clan forward after drinking, and every one of them followed. During the Third War, Thrall sent Grom to harvest lumber in Ashenvale as punishment for his uncontrollable aggression. When the demigod Cenarius proved unkillable, Grom drank from a fountain corrupted with Manaroth's blood a second time. The entire Warsong clan turned red-skinned. They killed Cenarius. Manaroth revealed himself as their master once more. Thrall and Jaina worked together to capture and cure Grom. Freed, Grom told Thrall the truth, that the chieftains drank willingly, that he went first. Then they entered Demonfall Canyon together to confront Manaroth. Manaroth blasted Thrall unconscious. Grom stood alone. The Pit Lord taunted him, telling him the demon fire would always burn in his veins. Grom charged and buried Gorehowl into Manaroth's chest. The Pit Lord exploded. Grom lay dying, the blood curse broken forever for every Orc alive. His last words, "The blood haze has lifted. The demon's fire has burnt out in my veins. I have freed myself." Thrall, weeping, "No, old friend, you've freed us all." His gravestone still stands in Demonfall Canyon. It reads that his name meant Giant's Heart, and that he earned it 100-fold. But the Hellscream story wasn't over, because Grom had a son, and that son would nearly destroy everything Thrall built. Thrall, the most important Orc in Warcraft history, was born in a pool of his parents' blood, found by the man who would name him after the word for slave, and raised in a human fortress to be a weapon. His real name was Goel. His parents were Duratan and Draka, chieftains of the Frostwolf clan, 2 of the only Orcs who ever refused Manaroth's blood. Gul'dan had them murdered by assassins shortly after Goel's birth. The infant was found among their dismembered remains by Edalis Blackmore, commander of the Alliance's internment camps, who named him Thrall and raised him at Durnhold Keep with a plan that was genuinely audacious. Blackmore wanted to raise an Orc with all the savagery of his people but the strategic intellect of a human, then use him to command the interned Orc armies and overthrow the Alliance to seize the throne for himself. Thrall was educated in history, tactics, and strategy. He was also forced to fight as a gladiator in Durnhold's arena, earning Blackmore enormous amounts of money. Prince Arthas Menethil once visited specifically to watch him fight. His only friend was Taretha Foxton, daughter of his wet nurse. As a child, she realized the infant Orc had no teeth and couldn't eat meat, saving his life by feeding him differently. Later, she smuggled books to him with notes hidden inside the covers. When Thrall finally escaped, she set fire to the camp as a diversion. After escaping, Thrall found Grom Hellscream and the Warsong, still fighting as the only free orcs left. Then he traveled to the Alterac Mountains and found the Frostwolf clan, where the blind elder shaman Drekthar revealed Thrall was Durotan's son and taught him the old shamanic ways. Thrall became the first new generation orc shaman. The elements answered him immediately and loudly. He allied with the escaped Orgrim Doomhammer, and together they liberated the internment camps. At the 5th camp, Orgrim was impaled through the back by a charging knight's lance. With his dying breath, he passed the Doomhammer and the title of warchief to Thrall. Thrall marched on Durnhold and offered peaceful terms. Blackmore threw Taretha's severed head from the battlements in response. Thrall, who had never cried before in his life, wept for the first time. Then he stormed the keep, killed Blackmore in single combat, freed every human survivor, and called upon the earth to level Durnhold completely. He named his new homeland Durotar after his father. He named his capital Orgrimmar after Orgrim Doomhammer. Every decision was a monument to people the world had already tried to erase, and he was just getting started. The camps. After the Second War ended and the Horde was defeated, the Alliance had a problem. They had tens of thousands of orc prisoners and zero agreement on what to do with them. Thoris Trollbane of Stromgarde demanded execution. Gen Greymane of Gilneas agreed. King Tyrannus Menethil II of Lord Aeron argued for mercy, believing the orcs would eventually lose their bloodlust if kept contained. The Kirin Tor supported imprisonment to study orc magic. Tyrannus won the debate. The Alliance Internment Act passed, and the orcs were placed in camps across southern Lord Aeron, guarded, fed, and kept alive at significant cost. Tyrannus had to levy a brand new tax to fund them. That decision alone fractured the alliance. Gilneas called the camps a pointless burden and withdrew. Stromgarde followed. The financial and political damage caused by keeping the orcs alive arguably did more harm to the alliance than the orcs themselves had done in 2 wars of open combat. The camps were brutal in ways nobody anticipated, not because the guards were cruel, though some were, but because of what happened to the orcs inside. They stopped fighting. Over months, the most feared warriors in the known world became catatonic. Fights between prisoners decreased until they were virtually unheard of. Many could be seen sitting motionless for hours. The walls, one report noted, were easy to scale if one were so inclined, which no one ever was. The orcs weren't being held by the walls anymore. They were being held by something inside themselves. Archmage Antonidas correctly identified the cause. This was not a disease. This was not despair. This was fell withdrawal. Cut off from the demonic energy they had been saturated with for decades, the orcs were experiencing a spiritual collapse. Their connection to the elements had been destroyed by Gul'dan. Their demonic fuel was gone. There was nothing left holding them together. Antonidas concluded that no human magic could fix it. The cure, if one existed, would have to be spiritual. He was right, and nobody in the Alliance knew how to do that. The camps ran for roughly 12 to 14 years. Known facilities included Durnhold Keep as the headquarters under Blackmore, the massive Hammerfall camp in the Arathi Highlands, and the Lordamere internment camp controlled by Dalaran. At least 5 named camps were eventually liberated by Thrall during his uprising. Security had become so lax by that point that some guards had started selling prisoners into slavery. The warrior, Rhaegar Earthfury, spent years as a gladiator slave because guards traded him to a human lord for coin. The internment camps didn't just break the orcs, they broke the alliance that built them. And the only thing that could have saved either side was something the humans never considered giving back: the elements. Garrosh Hellscream. Here's what makes Garrosh the most disturbing villain in Warcraft history. Every other major orc antagonist had an excuse. Ner'zhul was deceived. Grom was seduced by power and paid for it with his life. Even Gul'dan was a broken, starving outcast before the Shadow found him. Garrosh had zero excuse. He was never possessed, never tricked, never touched by demon blood a single time in his life. He was Maghar, brown-skinned and uncorrupted, quarantined during the Red Pox epidemic in Nagrand while every other orc on Draenor drank themselves into damnation, and he still became the worst of them. Garrosh grew up in Garadar, consumed by shame. The last thing he knew about his father was that Grommash Hellscream was the first orc to drink Manaroth's blood, the one who started everything. When Thrall arrived in Outland during the Burning Crusade and told him the full truth, that Grom broke the curse, that he died freeing every orc alive, Garrosh transformed overnight. Thrall saw potential in him, brought him to Orgrimmar, and made the single worst political decision of his career. He appointed Garrosh acting war chief before leaving to become world shaman. Garrosh himself protested, "My place is on the battlefield. I know much of war, but little of politics." Nobody listened. The Mak'gora with Cairn Bloodhoof is one of the most tragic moments in all of orc lore. Cairn, believing Garrosh had ordered the murder of druids, challenged the new war chief to ritual combat. What neither of them knew was that Magatha Grimtotem had secretly poisoned Gorehowl instead of blessing it. Garrosh didn't notice. Cairn was winning the fight until a scratch from the poisoned blade paralyzed him. The axe took his head. When Garrosh learned of the poison, he was furious, writing Magatha a letter wishing her a slow and painful death and calling the kill accidental treachery. He murdered one of the Horde's greatest leaders, and didn't even mean to do it that particular way. Then came Theramore. Garrosh stole the focusing iris from the blue dragonflight, baited the Alliance into concentrating their greatest commanders on the island, and dropped a mana bomb from a goblin zeppelin. The entire isle was annihilated. Not even an insect survived. Jaina's apprentice Kindy crumbled to dust when Jaina touched her. Jaina's hair and eyes turned permanently white from the residual energy. It was the most successful single military strike in Horde history, and it made every remaining alliance between factions permanently fragile. In Pandaria, he unearthed the heart of Yasharj, the desiccated heart of the most powerful old god the Titans ever killed, and used the sacred pools of the Vale of Eternal Blossoms to revive it. The entire valley was corrupted. The siege of Orgrimmar ended with both the Alliance and the Horde storming his underground fortress together. His trial was held at the Temple of the White Tiger. Bane Bloodhoof, son of the man Garrosh killed, was forced to defend him. Before the verdict came, a rogue bronze dragon broke Garrosh free to an alternate timeline on Draenor, where he warned his father about the blood and helped build the Iron Horde. Thrall killed him in a final Metgora using lightning. Garrosh's last accusation, "You made me what I am." Thrall's reply, "No, you chose your own destiny." Even that didn't end him. In the Shadowlands, tortured endlessly in Revendreth, Garrosh refused to repent. His final act was destroying his own soul rather than submit to anyone. The comparison to Arthas tells you everything. Arthas was corrupted by Frostmourne. Garrosh was never corrupted by anything. Every single choice was entirely his own. Shamanism. Before the demon blood, before the dark portal, before any of it, the Orcs had something no amount of field corruption could manufacture, a genuine living relationship with the natural world. And Gul'dan's greatest crime wasn't opening a portal to Azeroth, when it was destroying that. The Shadowmoon clan discovered the throne of the elements, and became the first Orcish shamans, communing with 5 elements: fire, water, Iwo, earth, air, and spirit. Shamans served as healers, spiritual leaders, and the connective tissue between clans. They built an entire civilization around listening. Gul'dan silenced all of it deliberately. He challenged the elemental spirits at the throne directly. He later drained the elemental fire lord Sirik on a volcano, shattering the last stable connection between the Orcs and the natural world. With the elements refusing to answer, he replaced shamanism with warlockery, demonology, and necromancy. A 5,000-year spiritual tradition was dismantled in less than a generation. The only surviving shaman was Drekthar, the blind Frostwolf elder, who kept the old ways alive in isolation for years with zero certainty anyone would ever come to learn them. Thrall found him, and the elements didn't just answer Thrall, they answered him extraordinarily. His power grew so far beyond normal that during the Cataclysm he was asked to become the world shaman, the single spiritual anchor point for the entire planet. He personally wielded the Dragon Soul, a weapon that had previously killed dragon aspects, to help destroy Deathwing. Antonidas had predicted the Orc lethargy could only be cured spiritually. He was right. The moment Thrall reintroduced shamanism to the interned Orcs, the lethargy broke. The elements were the cure. They always had been. The tradition Gul'dan tried to permanently erase now spans multiple races and sits at the center of the world's spiritual defense. But the physical damage he caused, the thing nobody has ever been able to undo, is a completely different story. The green skin. Most people assume Orcs turned green because they drank Manaroth's blood. That is wrong, and the real answer is significantly more disturbing. You did not need to drink anything. Mere environmental exposure to feel energy was enough. Warlocks practicing nearby, ambient corruption seeping through the air and soil of Draenor as the planet died around them. Prolonged proximity to fell magic rewrote Orc biology at a fundamental level permanently, and it happened to almost every Orc on the planet whether they personally chose it or not. Orcs originally had brown or tan skin. Some clans ran toward gray. 0 of them were green before Kil'jaeden's plan began. The color change was entirely a product of corruption, and it came in different intensities depending on how deep that corruption went. Standard green skin came from passive feel exposure. It is also fully heritable. Thrall was born green despite the fact that his Frostwolf parents never drank Manaroth's blood and were among the most spiritually uncorrupted Orcs alive. He was green from his first breath because the entire atmosphere of a corrupted Draenor had already done the work. No green-skinned Orc has ever managed to reverse it. The damage is permanent at the genetic level. Red skin was a different category entirely. That required drinking Pit Lord blood directly, or drinking it multiple times. When Grom drank from Manaroth's corrupted fountain a second time during the Third War, the entire Warsong clan transformed. Red skin, glowing eyes, a state called Chaos Orc that hit harder, bled more, and burned through the battlefield like something barely contained in a physical body. The fell Orcs of Outland were a third variation. After Illidan Stormrage conquered Outland, the Pit Lord Magtheridon was chained beneath Hellfire Citadel, and his blood was pumped through the blood furnace in an industrial process, mass-producing corrupted orcs at scale. Fell orcs displayed red skin, elongated tusks, and bony spinal growths erupting through their backs. They were also significantly larger than standard orcs. Magtheridon's blood did things to them that Manaroth's hadn't. And then there were gray-skinned orcs. Not a separate corruption, just years of the Blackrock clan living underground in Blackrock Mountain, their skin fading from prolonged darkness and mineral exposure. The Maghar, meaning uncorrupted in Orcish, survived with brown skin because they were quarantined in Garadar during the Red Pox epidemic in Nagrand, completely sealed off from the ambient corruption during the critical years. Garrosh was Maghar. His father wasn't, but Garrosh was. When Manaroth died and Grom broke the blood curse, the orcs were freed from demonic enslavement. Their rage subsided. Their connection to the elements began returning, but their skin stayed green. The corruption that altered their biology never reversed and never will. Every green-skinned orc alive today carries physical proof of what Gul'dan did to their people, permanently written into their cells, visible to anyone who looks. There is one additional detail about green-skinned orcs that nobody mentions. When they blush, they turn purple. But the physical changes Gul'dan caused were nothing compared to what the Blood Pact did to the orc clans themselves, the clans. The Horde was never one people. It was 10 clans with completely different cultures, traditions, and histories, welded together by Gul'dan's Shadow Council and Blackhand's Iron Fist. And once you look at what each clan actually was before the corruption, the tragedy gets significantly deeper. The Frostwolf clan refused the blood. Duratan, Thrall's father, looked at Manaroth's chalice and walked away. Every single Frostwolf member was bonded to a personal Frostwolf companion, matched as young orcs through a solo quest into the wilderness that was essentially their rite of passage. The clan's motto held that no two creatures would ever share a stronger bond than a Frostwolf orc and their companion wolf. They were exiled for refusing. They survived in the Alterac Mountains for over a decade in near complete isolation. They kept the shamanic traditions alive when everyone else abandoned them. The Warsong were the opposite. Mobile, aggressive raiders who fought from wolfback and hit their enemies before they could form a line. Gromash was the first to drink and the first to call his entire clan forward to join him. In alternate Draenor, captured and strapped to a tree by ogres, Grom bit the throat out of the warlord who leaned too close, then had the tree carried back to his camp and used as his throne. The Blackrock clan was the largest military force in the Horde, serving as its backbone through 2 wars. Their chieftain, Blackhand, became the puppet war chief. Orgrim Doomhammer ended that by challenging him to Magora and crushing his skull in a fight that lasted hours. The Shadowmoon founded shamanism and the Koshaharg festival. Their chieftain, Ner'zhul, was deceived by Kil'jaeden, eventually captured, physically tortured by the Burning Legion, and had his spirit ripped from his body and forced into the Helm of Domination. He became the original Lich King. The most respected shaman on Draenor ended up as the ruler of the Undead Scourge. The Bleeding Hollow clan has arguably the most metal tradition in all of Warcraft lore. Every new chieftain performs an ancient ritual, gouging out their own eye in a hidden chamber to receive a vision of exactly when and how they will die. Knowing their precise fate, they fight every battle with absolute fearlessness, because nothing can kill them before their appointed moment. Kilrog Deadeye used his death vision to seize the clan by killing his own father. He also killed 3 of his sons and 2 grandsons who tried to take it from him. In Hellfire Citadel on alternate Draenor, dying as a fell orc, he confirmed the vision had been accurate. He saw it coming the whole time. But the single most horrifying clan origin story belongs to the Shattered Hand. Kargath Bladefist was a gladiator slave of the Gorian Ogre Empire, the price of freedom. Kill 100 orcs in the arena. Kargath won every fight. Then the ogres told him the promise was a lie. He was thrown in a dungeon, chained to the wall. He severed his own shackled hand in fury. The other orc slaves did the same. They followed Kargath out in an uprising, killed the ogre emperor, and raised their bleeding stumps in triumph. The Shattered Hand didn't get their name from an enemy. They gave it to themselves. Legendary feats. No other playable race in World of Warcraft has a resume like this. Not even close. Start with the Collective. In the First War, the Horde crossed an interdimensional portal onto an alien world with 0 allies and 0 supply lines, and still conquered the entire Kingdom of Stormwind. In the Second War, they pushed north across the eastern kingdoms, enslaved red dragons, and came within striking distance of Lord Aeron's capital before Gul'dan's betrayal cost them the campaign. They nearly won twice, with their own warlock sabotaging them from the inside. Orgrim Doomhammer crushed Blackhand's skull to become war chief, then personally killed Anduin Lothar, supreme commander of the entire alliance. He was later captured, imprisoned, escaped, liberated internment camps alongside Thrall, and died passing his weapon and title to a younger orc he believed in. He never stopped. Varrock Sarfang's final act was challenging Sylvanas Windrunner to Mak'gora before the gates of Orgrimmar to expose her betrayal of the Horde. She killed him with dark magic. Before he died, he slashed her across the eye. His last words unified both factions against her in a way no political speech ever could. You cannot kill hope. But none of these feats come close to what Broxigar the Red did, and almost nobody knows his name. Broxigar was Varrock Sarfang's older brother, a veteran of every major war consumed by survivors' guilt. During the Third War, he was accidentally sent 10,000 years into the past. He fought in the War of the Ancients, armed with the axe of Cenarius, a weapon enchanted with Kalimdor's own magic. At the war's climax, as the Burning Legion poured through a portal over the Well of Eternity, Broxigar made a decision nobody else in Warcraft history has ever made. He leaped through the portal alone. He landed on Argus, the demon's homeworld. He fought a solo last stand against the entire Burning Legion until he reached Sargeras himself, the Dark Titan, the most powerful being in the Warcraft universe, the god behind every war the orcs ever suffered, and he wounded him. One orc, one axe. A wound deep enough to distract Sargeras for a critical second, letting Malfurion and Illidan close the portal and save Azeroth. Broxigar died there. The Night Elves built him a statue. The Krokul on Argus built him a shrine from his recovered possessions. They never learned his name. The only mortal being in Warcraft history to land a blow on Sargeras was an orc who just wanted to die for something worth dying for. Loktar Ogar. Every race in World of Warcraft has a battle cry, but the orcs have an entire language of honor, and understanding it tells you more about who they actually are than any lore summary ever could. Loktar Ogar means victory or death. It is the blood oath of the Horde, the acknowledgement that both outcomes are acceptable, not we will win, not we will survive, victory or death. For the Horde is the rallying cry that follows. Every sacrifice made today belongs to something larger. Blood and Thunder is the declaration of total commitment, and Akamagosh, the one nobody expects, means a blessing on you and yours. Because the orcs were never only warriors, they were people. The Mak'gora is the mechanism that holds all of it together. The ritual duel of honor through which orcs settle disputes and determine leadership. In practice, the rules have bent constantly. Magic has been used in multiple canonical Mak'goras. Orgrim crushed Blackhand's skull and became war chief. Garrosh unknowingly poisoned Cairn and shattered a generation of trust. Thrall executed Garrosh with lightning. Sarfang challenged Sylvanas and unified two factions with his death. The Lochvodnod is the epic ballad composed to honor the dead. Thrall composed one for Taritha Foxton, a human woman who smuggled books to him in captivity and died for her kindness. An orc war chief, writing a song of honor for a human girl, is everything the new Horde was built to represent. And that is the core of what Blizzard built the orcs into over 30 years. Tolkien's orcs are irredeemably evil, faceless, cultureless. They exist to be cut down and forgotten. Warcraft's orcs have 5,000 years of shamanic tradition, biannual peace festivals, clan poetry, wolf companions bonded for life, and a redemption arc that required 3 games, dozens of novels, and 2 decades of MMO content to fully tell. They were introduced in 1994 as the villain faction, the monsters pouring through a portal to destroy everything, and Blizzard spent 30 years asking one question: what if everything you thought you knew about the monsters was wrong? The answer is everything you just heard. A civilization manipulated into genocide by a demon lord, a race that broke its own curse from the inside, warriors who built shrines to enemies they respected, an orc who wounded a god on a world no mortal was ever supposed to reach, and a man named after the word for slave who built a city, led a people, and named every monument to someone else. Loktar Ogar. If you enjoyed this video and want to see every World of Warcraft villain explained, click the video on the screen now.